Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll cover from round 3 of this year's Sinquefield Cup. It is Fabiano Caruana versus Alireza Firouzja. I'm not gonna spoil anything or make some sort of a long intro. It is a positional masterpiece, so let's enjoy it for what it is. Fabi with white opens with pawn to d4. Sorry about that. Alireza opts for knight to f6. We have pawn to c4, pawn to e6, and knight to c3, inviting Alireza to go for the Nimzo-Indian, and that he does. Bishop to b4. The Nimzo-Indian is on the board. We have knight f3. The three knights of the Nimzo-Indian, and pawn to b6. This is the Duchamp variation, and I don't think we've had it in quite some time. And there are a couple of moves you can play, like bishop g5 is popular, pawn to e3 is popular, queen to b3 is popular. Here we have bishop to d2. It is the fifth most popular continuation, but as I always say, at this level you have to know the 10 most popular continuations, at least in the first 10 moves. We have bishop to b7 and pawn to g3, preparing to counter the strong light square. Bishop on b7, bishop captures on c3, b captures, and knight to e4. So gaining the early e4 square for the black knight, rook to c1, and here again, the position has been reached. For example, Magnus Carlsen had it against Shahryar Mamedyarov. It was in 2019. It was a blitz game. Probably Magnus prepared it, as Mamedyarov plays it quite a lot with black, and Magnus also won. In that game, Mamedyarov went for castle's king side. But here we have pawn to d6 by Alireza, bishop to g2, and now we have castle's king side. And this castle's king side is a new move. Some games with knight d7, also knight captures on c3 are in the database, but castles, and it is now as of move 9 that we have a completely new game. So, okay, castle's king side, we have knight to d7 and pawn to d5, grabbing more space. Looks a bit dangerous because now you give up the c5 and e5 square for the black knight, but you don't really mind, for example, e5, because you know that black will capture the bishop on c3, so closing that diagonal isn't really all that relevant. And indeed, that is what Alireza does. He captures on c3, rook captures, and pawn to e5. Fabi goes for pawn to e4 and pawn to a5 by Alireza. We have knight to d2, preparing to open up the position with the f-pawn, and pawn to c6. We have rook to e1, c captures on d5, we have c captures on d5, and knight to c5. Again, excellently placing the knight, putting more pressure to that e4 pawn, and just an excellent square for the knight. b4 for the moment cannot be played, so it is to remain there. We have queen to e2, pawn to f5 by Alireza, e captures, we have rook captures on f5, and knight to e4. Challenging the knight on c5, we have queen to e7 and queen to b5. And now the biggest problem for Alireza is the light square bishop on b7. It's not the greatest of pieces. We have queen to c7, pawn to b3. Fabi just continuing to build up his position. We have rook a8 to f8, putting pressure on f2, and pawn to a3. There's plenty of time to take care of that. We have queen to d8, knight captures on c5, d captures on c5, and rook to c2, just adding another defender to the f2 pawn. Queen to d6 by Alireza, and rook to d2. Now defending the f2 pawn and the d5 pawn. So this rook doing a very good job. We have king to h8, getting off of this diagonal, as it might become relevant later on. Bishop to e4, we have rook 5 to f6, and now bishop back to g2. And here, like I said, Alireza's biggest problem is the bishop on b7. The only way to develop it would be to play bishop to c8, but then the queen comes to c6, and you have you don't really have a good move here. If you trade, then the pass pawn is already on c6, guarded by the bishop. If you try bishop d7 now, then you trade on d6. For example, captures, pawn to a4. And now after any move, let's say rook to e8, because you want to defend the pawn, rook d to e2, and the pawn cannot be defended. You're going to win the pawn, you're going to be up material, and you're going to be pushing for a win. We all know that being up a pawn is a winning position, unless it's not. That is what our good friend Wilhelm Steinitz taught us. So after bishop to g2, we have rook to f5 and rook to e3 by Fabi. He has to make his position as safe as possible before going after the e5 pawn. We have pawn to h6, pawn to a4 and queen to f6. We have rook e back to e2 as 3 pieces of Alirezas are now attacking the f2 pawn, so you need to properly defend it. We have queen to d6 and pawn to h4. We have rook 5 to f6 and queen to d3. And now finally with the queen moving, Alireza gets to play bishop to c8, although it doesn't make that much of a difference. We have queen to e4, bishop to a6, now harassing the rook, rook to e3, and pawn to c4. This is how Alireza breaks through. B captures on c4 and queen to b4, trying to capture on a4 to create a passed a pawn. Queen to c2 defending, and now queen captures on c4. And here, there are many moves you could play, but trading queens is by far the best for Fabi. He plays queen captures, we have bishop captures, and now the passed pawn marches forward. Pawn to d6, we have rook to d8, blocking the passed pawn. Pawn to d7. We have king to g8, getting the king closer into the game. Rook captures on e5 and king to f7. We have rook to d4, attacking the bishop. Bishop to a2 and rook back to e2 with pressure on the bishop. Bishop b3 and rook to e3. Bishop to a2 and bishop to f1. Even time control has been reached, so there's nothing for Fabi to worry about. He just has to play a few more moves in order to really prove that the position is completely winning. King to f8 was played, bishop to b5, and now rook to e6, offering a rook trade. Fabi said, sure, let's trade, but first I'm going to prepare rook to d2, and he was in this position on move 46 that Alireza Firouzja resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Point being that if you trade rooks, which looks like a reasonable idea, let's say captures, and you move the bishop, white doesn't care about the d pawn any longer. You're gonna go after the b pawn, and that's it. There's no way to do anything here. For example, king to e7, you can just capture on b6, and you can't even capture back. If you capture on d7, then you just pin the bishop. If black unpins, then you just trade everything. Captures, and of course the extra pawn is winning. So that's pretty self-explanatory. And if you don't trade, if you just move the rook, let's say you go rook to f6, rook to e8 with check, and that's it. You either win the rook or rook captures, and then you promoted the pawn into a queen, and this comes with checkmate. So yeah, after two hard-fought games and pretty shaky start, for 2 draws for Fabi is a shaky start, even though it's not terrible. It's on 50%. Now he gets a win against Alireza and deals Alireza his first loss of the tournament. Alireza won a very nice game in the previous round, but now it's a loss. So this is one of the games from round 3, first one that we're covering. We're going to show at least one more, and then we are going to discuss the standings and what to expect in the other 6 rounds. So yeah, that's the game. Very nicely played by Fabi. Outplayed Alireza completely, and obviously he's in good form. Even when he doesn't play well, when he messes up a little bit, he still doesn't lose. And if his opponent doesn't do all that well, he wins. So he is in great shape, and maybe definitely one of the contenders to win the tournament. So yeah, really hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Gerhard Henkelmann, Derek King, Herman Escalante Jr., Robert Kiefer, and Edmund Freeman for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. Really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check upon your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.